The Waldenses valleys are 7 in number. They were more in ancient times, but the limits of the Vaudois territory have undergone repeated curtailment, and now only 7 remain, lying between Pinerolo on the east and Monteviso on the west, that pyramidal hill which forms so prominent an object from every part of the plain of Piedmont, towering as it does over the surrounding mountains, and like a horn of silver cutting the ebon of the firmament. The first 3 valleys run out somewhat like the spokes of a wheel, the spot on which we stand, the gateway, namely being the nave. The first is Lucerna, or Valley of Light. It runs right out in a grand gorge of some 12 miles in length by about 2 in width. It wears a carpeting of meadows, which the waters of the Pellice keep ever fresh and bright. A profusion of vines, acacias, and mulberry trees fleck it with their shadows, and a wall of lofty mountains encloses it on either hand. The second is Aurora, or Valley of Dews. It is a vast cup, some 50 miles in circumference, its sides luxuriantly clothed with meadow and cornfield, with fruit and forest trees, and its rim formed of craggy and peaked mountains, many of them snow-clad. The third is Angrogna, or Valley of Groans. Of it we shall speak more particularly afterwards. Beyond the extremity of the first 3 valleys are the remaining 4, forming, as it were, the rim of the wheel. These last are enclosed in their turn by a line of lofty mountains which form a wall of defence around the entire territory. Each valley is a fortress, having its own gate of ingress and egress, with its caves and rocks and mighty chestnut trees forming places of retreat and shelter, so that the highest engineering skill could not have better adapted each several valley to this very purpose. It is not less remarkable that, taking all these valleys together, each is so related to each, the one opening into the other, that they may be said to form one fortress of amazing and matchless strength. Wholly impregnable, in fact. All of the fortresses of Europe, though combined, would not form a citadel so enormously strong and so dazzlingly magnificent as the mountain dwelling of the Vaudois. The Eternal, our God, says Lager, having destined this land to be the theatre of his marvels and the bulwark of his ark, has by natural means most marvellously fortified it. The battle begun in one valley could be continued in another, and carried round the entire territory, till at last the invading foe, overpowered by the rocks rolled upon him from the mountains, or assailed by enemies which would start suddenly out of the mist, or issue from some unsuspected cave, found retreat impossible, and, cut off in detail, left his bones to whiten the mountains he had come to subdue. These valleys are lovely and fertile, as well as strong. They are watered by numerous torrents, which descend from the snows of the summits, the grassy carpet of their bottom, the mantling vine and the golden grain of their lower slopes, the chalets that dot their sides, sweetly embowered amid fruit trees, and higher up, the great chestnut forests and the pasture lands where the herdsmen keep watch over their flocks all through the summer days and the starlit nights, the nodding crags from which the torrent leaps into the light, the rivulet singing with quiet gladness in the shady nook, the mists forming grandly among the mountains, now veiling, now revealing their majesty, and the far-off summits, tipped with silver, to be changed at eve into gleaming gold, make up a picture of blended beauty and grandeur, not equalled perhaps, and certainly not surpassed, in any other region of the earth. In the heart of their mountains is situated the most interesting perhaps of all their valleys. It was in this retreat, walled round by hills whose heads touch heaven, that their barbs or pastors from all their several parishes were wont to meet in annual synod. It was here that their college stood, and it was here that their missionaries were trained, and after ordination were sent forth to sow the good seed, and as opportunity offered in other lands. Let us visit this valley. We ascend to it by the long, narrow, and winding Angrogna. Bright meadows enliven its entrance. The mountains on either hand are clothed with the vine, the mulberry, and the chestnut. Anon, the valley contracts, It becomes rough with projecting rocks and shady with great trees. A few paces farther, and it expands into a circular basin, feathering with birches, musical with falling waters, environed atop by naked crags, fringed with dark pines, while the white peak looks down out of heaven. A little in advance, the valley seems shut in by a mountainous wall, drawn right across it, and beyond, towering sublimely upward, is seen the assemblage of snow-clad Alps, amid which is placed the valley we are in quest of, where burned of old the candle of the Waldenses. Some terrible convulsion has rent this mountain from top to bottom, opening a path through it to the valley beyond. We enter the dark chasm, and proceed along on a narrow ledge on the mountain's side, hung halfway between the torrent, which is heard thundering in the abyss below, and the summits which lean over us above. Journeying thus for 2 miles, we find the pass beginning to widen, the light break in, and now we arrive at the gates of the Pra. There opens before us a noble circular valley, its grassy bottom watered by torrents, its sides dotted with dwellings and clothed with cornfields and pasturages, with a ring of white peaks encircling it above. This was the inner sanctuary of the Waldensian temple. The rest of Italy had turned aside to idols. The Waldensian territory alone had been reserved for the worship of the true God. And was it not meet that on its native soil a remnant of the Apostolic Church of Italy should be maintained, that Rome and all Christendom might have before their eyes a perpetual monument of what they themselves had once been, and a living witness to testify how far they had departed from their first faith?